RotoGrinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderEd, Blender HD. If you want to follow me on Twitter. And it's Wednesday, August 16th. And we'll be going through some build for the early MLB slate, even though we may not have the 3 o'clock game lineups in, but we'll go through a little bit of a process to build 3 lineups for the slate. And you know what you could do while you're here? Hit that thumb button. You know, I like the thumbs in the morning. Wakes me up. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. 12:40 Eastern. They'll be doing crunch time. It'll be Roth, Cheese. I think Stevie's on the show. So if you want a breakdown, you want to leading up to lock breakdown of the early MLB 4-game MLB slate, which has cores on it. Tune into that on the channel. Hit that notification bell. Good morning, Wataz. Daniel Hutchins. Good morning. Good morning. And the Mets lineup is slightly different. Alvarez is not in the lineup, and Narvaez is in, and Stewart is in for Vientos. So once that updates in the bat, I'll start looking at lineups. I'm going to look to build 3 lineups in real time on the show, but I reserve the right to change them because this Diamondbacks Rockies game is the 3:10 p.m. Eastern. The Rays Giants game is 3:45 p.m. Eastern. I don't even think we're going to get lineups by. I mean, it's quite possible you don't get the Rays Giants lineups even by lock at 1:10. Right? It's 1:10 lock, right? 1:10 for the Tigers Twins game and the Pirates Mets games. Yeah. So obviously, if people are not in the lineups and everything, I'll switch them up. I'll switch them around. But we could go through and see. I mean, how many Mets lineups are we going to really have? Well, I guess so. Against Oviedo? I don't know. So taking a look at this slate, if you have any questions, obviously feel free to post them in the chat, the YouTube chat here. I'm going to be using Lineup HQ, which you can get. You get Lineup HQ. You get the ownership projections, the player projections. You get everything. Combo. You get all the sports. NFL's coming up. Right? You get it all. Click on that link in the description. Become a RotoGrinders premium member. You also get access to my Blenders Game Theory Discord. You can talk to me whenever the hell you want. Click on that link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. Also, programming note, there will be no show tomorrow. There will be no show Friday. So Thursday, Friday. You're not going to see me again until Monday. And James will not be on Monday because he'll be returning from the live final. And we'll be starting to talk about NFL, right? A primer. We'll go through, the leading up. We got 2.5 weeks from then until the start of the regular season. And if you have any NFL DFS questions, specifically NFL DFS or anything, it could be any question, send them to me, questions@theoryofdfs.com, and I'll cover them on the show. These are especially for the people that don't necessarily watch the show live, and turn up in the YouTube chat, questions@theoryofdfs.com. But remember, no show tomorrow, no show Friday, right? I'm not going to be playing the MMA slate, either the pay-per-view slate, regardless, right? I'm going down today to Nashville, and then on Saturday I'll be in Lexington, so I'll be traveling around, so I will be away. What does this? Hopefully we'll see you at noon because you've been making me some loot on Prize Picks. Yeah, that's on my personal channel. Right after this at noon, I do like Prize Picks, Underdog, sports betting, anything. Go through, see what's on the board, teach people about how to find value and constant basic concepts, statistical and otherwise in sports betting. So obviously you could check that out on my own channel. You guys subscribe to Jordan Cooper on YouTube. But let's see. Let's reload this. Let's hopefully we get the Mets. I'm going to go through this regardless, even if we don't have the Mets lineup in. Because like I said, I had 11:02. Is it getting the Mets lineups in? Mets lineup. Okay, no, it still has Alvarez in. Still has Alvarez and Vientos in. But I will do this anyway, even though it's not in. Because I'm gonna have to redo it anyway. We're not half the lineups aren't going to be in by the time the show is over, right? So what I typically do is that it's a 4-game slate. I take a look at the pitching. I can tell just from projections that Like Maeda projects so far ahead of so many other people, like Taylor McGill at 101 pitches against the Pirates. Seems like, value, I guess. I mean, it's a smaller slate, so you're more inclined to kind of go for direct leverage. Obviously, direct leverage would be playing the Tigers against Maeda. But Maeda also projects for more than 4 points higher than any other pitcher. But then it seems like the difference between McGill, Stripling, Olsen, Savali, Oviedo, there's what? A difference of at most 4 points? And we can make up 4 points, no problem. But it seems like Kenta Maeda, like if you don't play Maeda, your projection in your lineup is just gonna start plummeting. So I'm gonna assume out of my 3 lineups, I'm probably playing 3 Kenta Maeda lineups. And if I'm not, I would be playing a Tigers stack against him of some type. Maybe not a 5-man stack. But I'm just getting the lay of the land like this. Obviously, we have cores with very high implied run totals. So I should expect to get a bunch of cores. And also, the pitching isn't all that expensive, right? Maeda's 9,900. Savali's 9,400, right? McGill's 6,100. It'll be easier. Stripling, 6,600. Easier to fit in stuff. We don't have like 12K pitchers or anything. So I look at this and I go, okay, what should I expect? I expect to get a bunch of Maeda McGill lineups, stuff like that. So I'm going to go. Since this reserve the right for time, instead of doing 300, I'm going to do 100 lineups, right? And I'm just going to look for like a diverse set of lineups to consider. A diverse. I'm going to start. I'm going to cut. I'm going to start cutting and trimming and everything like that. But 100 lineups to consider. So let's, I want at 15%, 20% of stacks, 15%. I want a bunch of them. Doesn't mean I'm going to be playing a Tiger stack, but I want to see it, right? Secondary stack, 15%, something, maybe 20. A little 2-mans or anything. And then what types of the stack combinations? Now on small slates, I don't think that you have to stack 5. I mean, you never have to stack 5-man, but you're going to get a bunch more of the 4-man stacks being plus EV. I mean, in addition to the 5-man stacks. So like 5X, 4-3, even 4-2s. I don't mind. 5-2, like something like this. So the numbers are irrelevant. Just I want to get a bunch of each types of lineups. But I want more 5X than anything else. So 40% of that, maybe 20%, 20, 25, 15, 4-2 at the least. Right. So I get 100%. I want to give it I'll give it a little cushion. A little cushion by doing 25, right? 105%. If you don't give it a little cushion, if it can't get all the way up to 100, it'll start giving you lineups that are just like all one-offs and stuff like, like just to give you lineups. So I always build in a little cushion. Same thing with the stacks. Like it adds up to 120, 160 because these are max numbers. So it's just okay. I'm doing this. I'm not playing 100 lineups. I'm only playing 3 lineups, but I'm building 100. Then in the build rules, like turn up some randomness. I want some diversity. I want to take a look at a whole bunch of stuff. 25% hit a range of outcomes, 20% team level randomness, 15%, right? Number 3 unique players. Salary, I mean, dude, it's a small slate. I mean, I don't mind leaving 3,000 on the table, even right on smaller slates. I don't want any batters against my pitcher, although 1 could be fine, right? I take a look and I don't mind if I have 100% of anyone. I just want to look at 100 lineups, right? 100 lineups that conform to the projections, but still have some wiggle room, so I could see. So I put in some diversity in stacks, diversity in stack types, 100 lineups. You could do this with 300. I typically would do it with 300. And I'm going to just press the build button. Just let's look at 100 lineups. Spastic Toaster asks, I rewatched a few Theory of DFS pods the past few days. You and Nerdy had a conversation about the idea of not playing 3 outfielders from one team in the same roster. Did anything come of that? Right, and you're right. It's not as important on a smaller slate like this, but just curious. No. I mean, I've already looked into it on larger slates, right? On larger slates, this happens in NFL with wide receivers. It's just that the more eligible players there are in the pool and the more roster slots there are in the pool, as the field size gets larger, so the contest size gets larger and larger. Remember, the concept is as the field size gets larger, the closer and closer to the nut lineup, the winning lineup will be. Okay? And a lot of times the nut lineup in MLB is technically like, on a 13-game slate is a whole bunch of one-offs. Now, it's extremely hard to build those lineups. If you don't need that lineup scores 50 points higher than the winning lineup. You don't need that lineup. But when you want to get closer and closer to the nut lineup, the one-offs that go, some team scores 7 runs, but no one does well except for one guy that has 5 RBIs and 2 home runs. So it's like the stack failed, but that guy put up 42 points. Now, obviously, in a 300-person contest, it's quite possible you don't even need him. In a 50,000-person contest, you may need him even if he's 3-4% owned. You may need him. So in a position like first base, like if you have Freddie Freeman and he gets a home run, he has 14 points. And then Pete Alonso hits a home run and gets 14 points. Like no one can have both on DraftKings. There's no utility slot. They're both only first base eligible. So it doesn't matter. No one could possibly have both. If they're outfielders, of course you could have both. You could have the top 3 scoring outfielders. You can't have the top 2 or 3 scoring first baseman. Unless obviously there's, someone's a first baseman / outfielder, a second baseman / third baseman. But when positional eligibility is strict like that, hey, a catcher hits a home run. Well, no one could have another catcher hits a home run. Well, you can't have Real Muto and Sal Perez in your lineup. Well, now you can because Sal Perez is first base eligible now. So it conforms to that type of thinking. In large field contests, because it's much easier to roster the highest scoring outfielders because you have 3 slots for them, that playing 3 outfielders from the same team, they benefit from correlation, but you're losing some value in the fact that it's locking you out of any other outfield one-off from some other team. On a small slate, the effect isn't that large because there's only so many options. On a 12-game slate, you have 24 teams with 3 outfielders, right? On average, right? That's 72 outfielders. You have to dodge like all the best one, if they're 5+% one-offs, like your stack may do well. You have 3 outfielders. One guy has 20, one guy has 24, and one guy has 10. And you may lose to a similar lineup to you that replaces the 10 points with some 30-point guy that scored for that price point. So that's the concept behind that. And we're getting the Pirates lineup and the Twins lineup in. I may run this again if it's widely different. Julian Polanco. Okay, so no Correa. Kepler, Lewis, Wallner, Vasquez, Solano is in, and Gallo is in, and Farmer's batting 9th. Okay. We have to run it. I mean, obviously, Correa is going to matter. And then the Pirates. Rivas isn't leading. Rivas is batting 8th now. Hayes is leading off. Hayes, Reynolds, McCutchen, Sawinski, Joe, Rodriguez, Peguero. Okay, so no Henry Davis. Yeah, I'm going to have to rerun this. But I'll go through the process even though obviously these will not be the lineups. So I ran 100 lineups using, just some diversity, 3 unique players. You can see here, I'm getting tons of cores, obviously. Tons of cores, 82% Kenta Maeda, 59% McGill, 21% Olsen. Or, obviously, once you get past, like, Maeda and even McGill, like, everything is kind of even. Right? You're not getting much Detroit. You're not getting much Mets. And that's probably because Alvarez isn't in the lineup. Right? 4 hitter stacks. Now you're getting Twins. Right? It seems like if you stack cores, you're getting 5, which makes sense. So I'm looking through here, and I'm going, okay, what's like the optimal 115? If I just played, which is obviously it's like a 5-3 lineup. It's basically cores, Kenter, Maeda, and McGill. So 115. Now, one swing of the bat is 14 points. Like, you can make that up, no problem. So that's 101, right? It's a small slate, which means I could go down. I could go down even further than that, right? So 101, I could probably go down to 9. I could probably still be fine at 95 point projection. So I'm going to look through all the 100 lineups, and I'm going to get rid of the lineups that are like under 95. I go, I don't want to consider those. I'm picking 3, right? So here's some really low ones down here. I don't have to go that low. So here's 95. I'm going to cut it off at 95. I'm going to get rid of the lineups that are under 95 point projection. So I'm cutting out like the worst projected lineups out of the bunch, like 86. Like those are the ones that are clumped on the bottom. And then I'm going back up to the top, and I'm going to do a very similar thing to like ownership. This is a very blunt methodology. I also don't want to play the highest owned lineups, 271.92, right? The optimal right now, based on the current numbers, which are not accurate until everything updates, 295.34. So this is 271 at 110. I'm gonna scroll. I'm like, okay, maybe cut it off, maybe 250. I mean, that seems like a decent enough. So I'm getting rid of the lineups that are above 250% owned in sum. Okay. So now I'm down to 76 lineups. What stacks do I have? Yeah, I'm starting to get less and less of Detroit. Getting more Pittsburgh. That should be a sign. Pittsburgh, that's leverage. I mean, when I use direct leverage, I like doing it against SB2 types rather than SB1 types. I'm not saying Maeda is an ace, but Maeda projects 4 points better than any pitcher. But the difference between McGill and the other pitchers in that range is like a point or two, and that's at 101 pitches. If you make Taylor McGill's pitch count like 94, like he's kind of in line. He has 6,100. He's cheaper. Projection-wise, all the other pitchers outside of the 2 pitching at Coors are projected about the same. But the ownership on McGill is going to be way higher. So I look at this and I go, okay, maybe I'm interested more in Pittsburgh. Less in Detroit. Right? Because what's left? Because I'm looking to see what's left. Okay, now I'm going to start cutting out lineups that are too low projected for their ownership. So I'm going to sort by fantasy points. Then any lineup that is lower projected and higher owned, I'm getting rid of. Out of consideration. I'm not saying they're bad lineups, but I made 100 to look at, and I'm only trying to play 3. So I need to cut by some reason. And in general, in DFS, the concept is you want to get the highest projection for the lowest ownership. DFIC asks, does it ever make sense to completely remove some players from stacks since their outlier performances are still too low? Well, they're in stacks. They benefit from correlation. If anything, you'd be doing the reverse. The high-scoring outcomes where they score a lot of points, but their teammates don't, those you can get rid of in one-offs. Like light-hitting players, if you want to get rid of in one-offs, that's what the only in stacks button is here on Lineup HQ. So if if you want Kyle Isbell to not be a one-off, you press only in stacks. But in a stack, it benefits. The team puts up 12 runs and each batter gets 5-6 at bats. That benefits you. That's the biggest plate appearance correlation. You want that. Okay, so 242. I'm going to get rid of the lineups that are under see, this is 249% owned and a point lower in projection. So I'm going to get rid of this lineup because it's lower projected but higher owned. 242, 245. So I need to beat 242. Here's 241, 219, 243, too high. 225, too high. 214 is fine. Get rid of this. 214. We got to beat 214. 210. Okay, I messed up. I eliminated that also. Got to beat 210. This is just, I'm doing this as a dummy process because obviously the lineups have changed since I generated lineups. 210, 214. Go to 214. Or anything that beats 24205. Seems like this lineup seems pretty good. With Estrada as a one-off, Stripling, McGill. That ain't bad lineup. 205, 214. Okay, so we got to beat 205 now. So now we're down to 51 lineups. Find a lineup that's lower than 205.3. Here's 205.13. We got to beat 205 now. Here's 202.76. Okay, keep on going. 194. As we go down, 187. 187, 177. Now we're getting down to lower projected lineups. 177, 184. 177. Here's 161. Okay. Keep on going. Can we beat 161? We may not be able to. 148. Okay, there's a 96-point projected lineup at 148. Can we beat 148? Probably not. We're getting to the end. And yeah, we're at the end. So what are we left with after doing that? We're left with what? 12 lineups. Right? Actually, he ended up getting rid of all the Pittsburgh lineups. Right? So we have Arizona. We got the Detroit lineups in there. We have Detroit stacks as leverage. Lewis Marte. I mean, as a 4-man, not as a 5-man. Savali, McGill. Combinations. Olsen, McGill. It's going to be very hard on this slate to not have any bats from Coors. That's probably a given. Take a look at player exposures, what's left. It looks like McGill should be as owned as he should be. Right? Nolan Jones, Christian Walker is going to be chalky, but he seems at 24% ownership. Maybe he's actually slightly underowned. Right? Based on what's left. Nolan Jones at 12%. Right, it looks like, just from a projection standpoint, you're still getting plenty of Coors. So now I got 12 lineups, but I only want to play 3 of them. Remember, this is just a dummy process right now because we have updated lineups from Minnesota, updated lineups from Pittsburgh. Right, that's probably why I'm not getting that much Pittsburgh. This is something that you'd be running once you got all the lineups in. Right, I'm not going to wait around. We're not going to sit here and fiddle our thumbs waiting around for projections to update. For a 110 lock, just to redo this process again. And you can do it. You can build another 100. You can. Remember, you've added enough diversity that the 100 that you built the first time isn't going to be the same 100 that you built the second time, which isn't going to be the same 100 that you built the third time. You're just getting a swell. Here's a candidate set. How do I trim down my candidate set of lineups until the ones that seem the best from a projection versus ownership standpoint? And then as you play more lineups, fit within your risk profile of how much, do I want to have Kenta Maeda in all 3 of my lineups? Do I want to fade him in all 3 of my lineups? That's a risk question. That's not a strategy question. So I'm going to these 12 lineups. And, if you want to use bands of risk, obviously the lineups that are higher projected and higher owned have a little bit more like cash equity. Of course, they're sharing a lot of points with the field, so there's a little less leverage. But if you're playing 3 lineups and you're like, well, I don't want to just I don't want to go whole hog and play 3 risky lineups. You could choose to play, a lineup from kind of the top, lineup from kind of the middle, lineup from the bottom. You spread out your risk like that. You can. I mean, obviously we're dealing with 3 lineups. I'm talking, if you have 20 lineups, like I'm going to play 5 from here, 5 from here, 5 from here, 5 from down there. Although the highest EV lineups will typically be the lineups that have the most leverage, but they're also the highest risk lineups. So you play 100 of those, it's quite possible you'll lose 98% of your money on more than half the time. Defik asked about the outlier performances, but it isn't an opportunity cost if a stack goes off, but you include someone like Michael Chavis that only has 10 plus fantasy points in 2% of appearances. Yeah, but if the stack goes off, he's more likely for that to happen. And remember, you don't have to be perfect. Like, dude, you don't need 700 points in order to win an MLB. Especially on the large slates. Go look at the winning lineup on a 10-game MLB slate. The winning lineup of the large field GPP is not even within the top 100,000 possible. Like what's the nut lineup? The optimal lineup. Go look for that. And then go, how many lineups do you get before you get to the winning GPP lineup? Some slates, it's like 100,000 lineups. Because it's like a whole bunch of one-offs, right? All the best scoring one-offs, a 2% owned pitcher, that type of shit. And then what's the second nut lineup? It's removing one of those players for the second highest scoring player. And now it's still an all one-off lineup. And then the next all one-off lineup. And then here's a two-man stack. Like, those lineups are rarely represented in your contests. Occasionally someone will luck into one of those. But they're not represented. So, like, Shave is putting up 7 points in a spot where your stack put up 14 runs. It's no big deal. Okay, so we got 12 lineups. Let's take a look. We got Taylor McGill in all but one. So let's take a look at the non-Taylor McGill lineup. We're playing 3 lineups, and maybe you don't want to play Taylor McGill in all 3 of your lineups. So which is the one Taylor McGill lineup that's okay? Here, Stripling Maeda with the Diamondback stack. Lamont Wade, Peguero, Nolan Jones. Okay, so we're going to choose this because we've already curtailed it down to like ownership versus projection wise. We're pretty good. 102, 205% owned. Okay, so we'll play that one, for example. So we don't have to play McGill in all 3 of our lineups. We're making that choice. Is that a strategic decision? No, it's just like risk wise. I don't want to play McGill in all 3 of my lineups. Okay. You don't mind playing Maeda in all 3 of your lineups. You don't want to play McGill in all 3 of your lineups. And maybe you don't want to play Ross Stripling in any more than one of your lineups. Well, then you already picked the Ross Stripling lineup. Get rid of the other Ross Stripling lineups. Right? So you could go here and go, okay, already picked this one down here. So I'm going to get rid of the other 2 Ross Stripling lineups. Okay? We picked the Diamondback stack. So it's like, what other stacks? We got Detroit as leverage, right? Detroit's still here. Maybe we'll play one leverage. Well, that'll be our risky one. Some type of leverage stack. I don't think it's a 5-man. I think these are all 4-man Detroit stacks, right? You mix it with Arizona. You mix it with Coors, Savali McGill, Olsen McGill, right? Olsen McGill, another Olsen McGill. Let's see who's in our saved lineups. To spread it out. I mean, we already got Carroll, we got Herrera, Marte, Gurriel. We don't have Charlie Walker. So maybe we play the Detroit lineup with Charlie Walker. Right? Because any of the lineups are fine. So it's like, here's Christian Walker or Charlie Walker, Christian Walker. Okay, so we'll play the Detroit lineup with Christian Walker in it. There we go. That one. Get rid of the other 2. Okay, so what do we got now? Now we got 2 lineups. We got 2 Kettle Marte lineups. So maybe we don't want to play a 3rd Kettle Marte lineup. Right? We're spreading it out. So I go to Kettle Marte and I go, which lineups, any lineup that already has them in, we're going to get rid of this one, this other Arizona stack to consider. Right? So now we got 7 lineups considered. We already picked 2 of them. Right? We have a Detroit stack. We have an Arizona stack. Maybe we don't want another Arizona stack. We want to spread it out. We have a Minnesota. So Arizona we already got. Detroit we already got. Maybe we take a Minnesota stack against Olsen. Right? I mean, obviously, like Correa is not in some of these lineup people aren't in. We could do that. Out of these 2, there's a Walker Gurriel lineup. And Correa's in the lineup. Obviously, we can't play that. Blackman, Jones, Yandy Diaz is a one-off at 5,200. I mean, we could do this. We can play Minnesota. We can play Colorado. We can play the Colorado stack, right? All the 5-man. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with Maeda and McGill. Obviously, Alvarez is not in the lineup. Or we can play we can play the Minnesota one, right? With no Diamondbacks in it. We have Tovar, Jones, and Blackman. So it's a 4-man. It's a 4-3-1. So we play that. And there's the 3 lineups. Right? And it ends up that you have, you have 2 Nolan Jones lineups. You have a decent bit of diversity, as much diversity you can get in 3 lineups. But from an ownership perspective, I mean, you're playing a 205 own lineup at 102, a 205 lineup at 101, a 177 lineup at 98. Right. Your Detroit lineup. Obviously, this top lineup is more of a, obviously you're eating a lot of the chalk here, but not all of it. Right? You're playing Stripling, you're not playing Maeda. Right? You're playing like Pagero, right, against McGill, who should be lower owned, right? Wade at first baseman. So, like, you're fine. You're fine with this lineup. And if the Diamondbacks do well, like, yeah, a lot. You're sharing points with a bunch of people, but I mean, you'll probably return some money. But you still have enough leverage for first place. Then this Minnesota lineup, now you're getting a little bit more contrarian. But your projection is pretty high because you're playing the Maeda McGill combo. Right? This adheres to any type of thing that you go, well, if you're going to play Maeda McGill, don't play the Diamondbacks. Right. If you're going to play the Diamondbacks, don't play Maeda McGill on a 4-game slate. Like, kind of, you're separating, so you're not bunching in all the ownership in the same lineup. And then you have the leverage stack. Right? You're playing 4, Rogers, McKinstry, Baddoo, Green. The Maeda implodes. Yeah, sure. Yeah. This line of these 2 lineups are now not going to do very well. You got one that could do much better, and it's going to kill off like 70% of the people that play the Maeda lineups. They don't have to be like, it's like, well, if this lineup does well, then these 2 lineups do bad. Yeah, that's called hedging. That's what a hedge fund is. And when you build a portfolio of when you build 150 lineups, you're not building, it's like you can play a pitcher in 20 of those lineups and then also play a stack against that pitcher in 5 other lineups. You're playing for all different types of outcomes. If you're like, no, I don't want to play the Tigers at all. I just want to play Maeda and all, and then you could do that. You don't have to consider any Detroit lineups. You could play, I want to play 3 Diamondback stacks. That's perfectly fine also. Just play the lineups that are Diamondback stacks that have the appropriate balance of ownership and projection. This is a blunt way, very blunt way to build lineups for GPPs. I mean, I've showed this process on the show multiple times. Now, a quicker way to do some of this is in the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports for advanced players. It includes custom Excel tools, which one of them is the portfolio trimmer in Excel that James and I have developed. That whole process of like cutting out the lineups in between and trimming the top, the bottom, trimming lineups that only have. I want to only trim the Marte lineups. I only want to include these like. We've developed that. So you could export. You could build 300 here in Lineup HQ, export all the lineups into Excel, and then do all the trimming in Excel. Very simply with, there are buttons and everything for you to use. You could do it in Excel. I've done 3,000 lineups. So although Lineup HQ can't build 3,000 at once, you could go and you could build 300, and you can build 300 of each stack type. In NFL, you know what I'll do? I'll build 300 of every quarterback. Because obviously quarterbacks are correlated with, the stacks and run backs and everything like that. And I want to see 300 of them. And obviously I'll add some diversity. But you could do that. You could do 305 threes, 305 twos, 305 X's, 304 fours, 300, and then cut and paste them all into the portfolio trimmer. And then go, okay, let me trim the top, trim the bottom, get rid of the clumping. We call it smart trim. Get rid of the lineups in between, everything like that. And next thing you know, you're down to like 50 lineups to choose from, and maybe you're playing 20 of them, and you're like, okay, what 20 do I want to play? It'll even show you little exposures, right? So as you trim, it'll show you how much of certain players they have. So if you want to just trim by certain players, you can. So you could do that. And the Theory of DFS for advanced players, you can pick that up. theoryofdfs.com. Hit that thumbs up button, right? I got to rebuild lineups, right? Because we got the Twins and everything, right? I wasn't gonna wait around. If I'm going to show process stuff, I'm going to sit here wait 10 minutes for projections to update. But hit that thumbs up button. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. 12:40 Eastern, crunch time. Kevin Roth. There's nothing in the weather report. I don't think that matters much. Not at least for the early slate, it doesn't. And you got Cheese, you got Stevie. They'll hopefully have all the lineups in at that point. Hopefully. So tune in then. No show tomorrow. No show Friday. So I will be back on Monday. Send in your NFL DFS questions. Next week starts the NFL primer. And okay, let's get up to speed on the nuances. There's a lot of stuff that you do here is the same in NFL. But like there are going to be some nuances. So we go through the nuances, get a little primer heading into NFL DFS season. Props or anything NFL related. If you got a question, send them in. Questions at theoryofdfs.com, because that's what I do here. You have questions, I have answers. Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.